cleansing, state-sanctioned human rights violations, non-state actors in international crime and terror, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and increased persecution of religious minorities against liberty and freedom of conscience. In this situation over the past quarter of a century, new challenges and opportunities have emerged that require a revisiting the state of the question concerning the social ethics of war and peace. In my talk today, I have two main points. The first is you will have a better understanding of the pacifist foundation in the United States. The second is you will have a better grounding of just war proponents in the United States. So let us look at the pacifist tradition. One major pacifist intellectual in the United States is John Howard Yoder. Yoder had an influence on contemporary peace and war ethics. He comes from the Protestant tradition and addressed war and peace in the context of a biblical exegesis of Jesus, which he calls the politics of Jesus. He wrote this in a book called Christian Attitudes to War, Peace, and Revolution. Yoder argued that the just war theory has failed the historical test and has been, quote, used to bless whatever war a nation wanted to make, end quote. Howard Yoder was actually trying to rebut a man by the name of Reinhold Niebuhr. Reinhold Niebuhr argued that in a society like the United States, pure love is impossible. Central to Niebuhr's rejection of Jesus, of the New Testament, as a model for our ethics, is his conviction that the ethics of Jesus would be ineffective today. But Howard Yoder says, I no longer look at the question of effectiveness. I trust this question less. For Yoder, Jesus rejected the violence of his time and thus embodied a model against violence and a model for pacifism today. Much like Yoder, this pacifist intellectual, Stanley Hauerwas, also held to a looking to Jesus as the source for pacifism today. Stanley Hauerwas said in Against the Nations, War and Survival in a Liberal Society, that nonviolence is not impossible. It's not an impossible ethic, but it's actually a calling, a vocation, a type of mission for the community. Hauerwas rejects violence and wrote that, quote, any resort to violence betrays one's relation to God, end quote. As such, peaceful nonviolence is not an impossible ethic. Let us move to the just war proponents. One of those proponents is an intellectual by the name of Paul Ramsey. Paul Ramsey replies to Reinhold Niebuhr as well. However, unlike the pacifists, Ramsey actually built upon the appeal to love. By engaging in defensive war, Paul Ramsey says it's not a fall, but it shows that one loves one's neighbor. And finally, Michael Walzer talks about war as that war has a moral language. He says in his book, Just and Unjust Wars, How Shall Modern War Be Conducted Today? Justly, Michael Walzer says that the changeover to just war doctrine and practice was not a fall in Christian ethics, but the primary motive for approving Christian participation in warfare is that we want to help other people. So, in summary today, I have given you some authors in the Pacifist tradition, and I've given you some authors in the just war tradition. May we learn to use these according to the words of, in my Catholic tradition, the Bishop of San Diego, Robert McElroy. He said that the international community needs to have some ethical grounding where moral norms can substantially influence foreign policy decision making. Let us not operate in a vacuum. And may this presentation help you with whatever decisions you have to make. Thank you.